to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another video, and in this video it's going to be more broad NFL, but there's a lot of rumors going around in the NFL today, some of which we've heard about in the past, but now we're starting to get more clarity on the situation specifically with Orlando Brown. I'll talk about the situation and kind of players forcing themselves off of teams and where I think some of these players could end up and how it could ultimately potentially affect the NFL draft, specifically in the first round. Orlando Brown, news came out today. Of course, there was news about 2 weeks ago that Orlando Brown was not happy with his role with the Baltimore Ravens. He's coming up on free agency in a year. So you still have him under a cost-effective rate for one more year. Then his rookie contract will be up, and then he's going to hit free agency. He's one of the best tackles in the NFL, but he wants to play left tackle. Last year, he got the opportunity to step in when Stanley went down. Stanley, of course, if not the best, one of the best left tackles in the entire sport, isn't moving anywhere. Brown played very well. He probably looks at it like if he has an opportunity to play left tackle when he becomes a free agent, he has the ability to make a lot more money, and he thinks that's where he's best suited, and he was trying to force his way off Baltimore. Well, Baltimore now today came out and said that they are now exploring the option to trade him away. Deshaun Watson, news has come out on both ends as well that Deshaun Watson is staying with his stance, and he's trying to force his way out of Houston. And Houston now is doubling down and saying that they have no intentions whatsoever of trading him away. We're going to pull up some of the quotes. They said that they've even received voicemails that they're not answering from other teams. And I'll talk about whether or not I think that's the best of ideas. In addition to that, news came out about Russell Wilson. Of course, there's been rumors circulating around the league that Wilson is unhappy in Seattle because of the poor offensive line, because of the limitations on that football team, and he feels like he doesn't have the ability to put himself over the top. I personally think that he's using his position as leverage, being that he knows that he's a franchise quarterback and trying to get Seattle to do what he wants them to do to get the job done. But he did come out, according, I believe, to Adam Schefter, and say that the 4 teams that he'd be willing to go to if Seattle did, in fact, explore trade opportunities. So let's get into all the rumors of the day. The first thing we're going to start with is Russell Wilson. Here's Adam Schefter. Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson has not demanded a trade. His agent Mark Rogers told ESPN, Wilson has told the Seahawks he wants to play in Seattle, but if a trade were considered, the only teams he would go to are the Cowboys, Saints, Raiders, and Bears. Now, of course, there were reports a couple of weeks ago that Russell Wilson was unhappy in Seattle, and, with the offensive line and things like that, and the offensive line there has been poor. You could certainly chalk it up to at least partially due to the fact that he's eating up a lot of the money on the salary cap, and that's what happens when you become a franchise quarterback. You lose the ability to pay other players on the team. But, of course, they also traded away a lot of draft capital to bring in a guy like Jamal Adams. Maybe Wilson felt like that may have not been the best decision, especially seeing how he's getting battered around there. In terms of the probability of the Giants ever being, even if he wanted to come here, somebody brought that up to me on Twitter. I mean, if the Giants were to trade away, say, Saquon Barkley and first-round picks, he'd be coming into a worse situation. So that doesn't add up to me at all. In terms of the 4 teams that he said he'd be willing to go to, well, the Cowboys make sense, even though their offensive line is starting to fall apart a little bit. I think they need to rebuff that, but they definitely have great weapons. The Saints might have the best, if not the best, one of the top 3 or 4 best 53-man rosters in the sport, so it makes sense, even though they don't have cap space, so I don't know how that would ever happen. The Raiders have a great offensive line and young wide receivers. The Bears are interesting to me. The Bears don't have much of an offensive line. Allen Robinson, by all reports, wants out of there, so I don't really see that being a link to Russell Wilson, outside of the fact that maybe he played in Wisconsin, which is close to Chicago. But I don't really see much of a fit there other than that they have a good defense. The Cowboys, Saints, and Raiders make more sense to me, but don't expect Russell Wilson to be going anywhere. I firmly believe he will be in Seattle for the foreseeable future. It doesn't seem like the type of quarterback that's going to force his way out of there. I think he's trying to use his situation, like I said, as leverage to try to get them to improve the areas that he feels like need to be improved the most. Next thing we're going to talk about is this, and kind of the conflicting reports that came out with Deshaun Watson. Well, not conflicting, but how Houston feels about the situation and how Deshaun Watson is not coming off his stance. And eventually, this is going to come to a standstill. And I personally think Houston is going to have to trade him away. The longer that Houston waits and the messier that this gets, the less they could potentially get. And reports are coming in that they're getting tons of calls from teams around the NFL. Houston continues to avoid conversations with teams in regards to trading Deshaun Watson per sources. They are refusing to trade their franchise quarterback. And of course, they got a brand new GM this year who probably came in, obviously, from New England and said to himself, well, I got my future franchise quarterback. That was probably a major reason why he took the job and didn't think that Deshaun Watson would be doing this. But this looks like an ugly marriage right now, and I think Houston really has no choice. They're in complete rebuild mode, and I think they need to try to get as much as they possibly can for Deshaun Watson right now and possibly trade up early into the first round and draft their future franchise quarterback. I don't think they have much of a choice. Based off of what Matt Stafford got, you're talking at least 3 or 4 first-round picks and an impact player on your roster. But we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. As far as how Watson feels on the situation, according to Dan Graziano, per sources, Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson met with new Texans head coach David Culley last Friday. In that meeting, Watson reiterated that he wants to be traded and told Culley he has no intention of playing for the Texans again. No change from Watson's end. He remains dug in. So I honestly don't see this coming to a happy ending if you're a Houston Texan fan. If you're a Texan fan, obviously you already let J.J. Watt go. Watson sees that. He sees that your team is completely decimated. I understand why Watson wants out of there. This is kind of unprecedented, though. A quarterback as young as he is, I think he's still only 25 years old, after he got a huge contract extension, forcing his way off the team. But last year, of course, was very disappointing. They ended up going 4-12, not because of Deshaun Watson. He ended up having a great statistical year. In terms of, and we'll see what ultimately happens. I'm going to continue to say I think Miami makes the most sense, along with the New York Jets, if he'd be willing to go there, for the simple reason of how high they're picking in this year's draft, and the fact that, even though Miami drafted Tua, you don't pass up the opportunity to potentially bring in a guy like Deshaun Watson. Of course, there's a number of other teams. The San Francisco 49ers, there's a number of other teams that could make a lot of sense, including the New Orleans Saints, the Chicago Bears, the New England Patriots. I'm sure they would have a ton of offers, and maybe they're trying to play hardball and try to get as much as they possibly can, and they don't want to seem desperate. The other thing I wanted to pull up for you guys was the news about Orlando Brown. This coming from NFL Update. The agents for Ravens offensive tackle Orlando Brown have begun exploring trade possibilities per Jeremy Fowler. Brown desires to play only left tackle, and the Ravens will be getting Ronnie Stanley back next season. So this is looking more and more like this is going to happen. And again, much like Watson, this is very rare. This is a 24-year-old tackle, still in his rookie contract, demanding out. And if you're Baltimore, what choice do you have? You're starting to see players get more and more power in the NFL. You see it a lot in the NBA because that's much more of an individual sport. But I think these players are starting to realize the power that they do in fact have. And if they're not happy, they want to move somewhere else. Stanley sees an opportunity to potentially shift to the left side. What it'll cost for him? Well, I've talked about it in the past. There's been instances where it costs multiple first-round picks. A couple of years ago, a franchise left tackle got traded from Houston. They went to Houston, rather. They gave up 2 first-round picks to bring him in. I would think it'd be at least a first-round pick for Orlando Brown when you factor in what he makes. Where are the most logical destinations? I'd say the Seattle Seahawks. I think Russell Wilson obviously is very unhappy with his offensive line there. The problem they have, they don't have any first-round picks. They've traded them all away for the next couple of drafts, I believe, but they could make a lot of sense. Maybe they could get creative and include a player. The Indianapolis Colts had their left tackle retire this year. That could be a seamless transition and a move that makes a lot of sense. They're picking in the 20s of this year's first-round draft, and you saw the problem that the Chiefs had with their offensive line in the Super Bowl. Of course, they had injuries, but their tackles are getting up there a little bit in age. Maybe the Chiefs could make sense. There are so many teams that could make sense. Could the Giants make sense? Sure. But do I see them giving up the 11th overall selection for a team that's still rebuilding? Probably not. I don't see it. I think a team that's more in contention will look to make a move like this. But we'll have to wait and see what the markets are for all of these players. Wanted to get a video up talking about it because I was interested by all the rumors going around in the NFL. Try to do more videos like this, more broad NFL content. If you guys enjoy it, let me know in the comments below. As always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.